My name is Alex, and I'm 27. If you ask my parents, they'd say I was the difficult one in the family. Not because I was reckless or irresponsible, quite the opposite. I paid my bills on time, kept my apartment tidy, and didn't rely on anyone to clean up my messes. But to my parents, that just made me the designated fixer, the one expected to shoulder family burdens whenever someone else hit a rough patch. And by someone else, I mean my older sister, Emily. Emily is 30, but you'd never guess it from the way she lives her life. She's never held a steady job for more than a few months. Always had a convenient excuse for why she couldn't pay rent, and somehow convinced our parents that none of it was ever her fault. According to her, every boss was a tyrant, every roommate a nightmare, and the entire job market a hopeless wasteland conspiring against her. Meanwhile, she bounced between my parents' house and whichever friend was naive enough to offer her a couch. I had learned early on that if I wanted a stable, peaceful life, I needed to keep my distance. It wasn't easy. My parents had a knack for pulling me into her chaos, usually through guilt trips about being a good sibling or using the classic family sticks together line. But I'd gotten pretty good at setting boundaries, or so I thought. It all started unraveling at a family dinner. I should have noticed the warning signs the moment I walked into my parents' house that evening. My mom was being extra cheerful. My dad was unusually quiet, and Emily barely looked at me. Something was off, but I didn't realize how bad it was until my mom hit me with it mid-dinner. "So Alex," she began, her voice a shade too sweet, "your sister is going to be moving in with you for a little while." I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. The room fell silent. My parents watched me closely, clearly bracing for a reaction. Emily kept her eyes on her plate, but I could see the faint hint of a smirk pulling at her lips. What I managed to say, trying to keep my tone neutral. I could feel my heart rate spike, my pulse thudding in my ears. They had dropped this bombshell on me without a single heads up, like I was some side character in my own life, just expected to go along with their plans. "She's had a rough time lately." My mom continued, leaning into that tone that made it sound like this was all for my benefit. "You've got that nice apartment all to yourself, and she could really use a stable place to get back on her feet." My dad chimed in, clearing his throat as if this whole thing wasn't completely absurd. "Yeah, and you've always been so responsible, Alex. It's just for a few months, she just needs a little support." I glanced at Emily. She finally looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time all night. She shrugged, like this was no big deal, like it hadn't been coordinated behind my back. "It'll only be for a few months," she added, her voice dripping with faux innocence. "I can help out around the place too." I almost laughed. Emily couldn't even keep her car clean, let alone share a living space responsibly. But I kept my face neutral, the gears in my head already turning. They were expecting me to blow up, to resist, to argue. That's what they'd prepared for. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Not this time. "Okay," I said, setting my fork down and leaning back in my chair. I felt the weight of their anticipation hanging in the air. They were waiting for the fight, the refusal, the pushback. But I just nodded, letting the silence stretch long enough to make them uncomfortable. My mom blinked, clearly taken aback by my lack of resistance. My dad shifted in his seat, visibly relieved. Emily's smirk grew a fraction wider, her confidence bolstered by my apparent capitulation. "Really?" my mom asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Yeah, if it helps Emily get back on her feet, I don't see why not." I smiled, watching the tension in their shoulders melt away. They had no idea what I had just agreed to, but they would soon enough. For the rest of the meal, they babbled on about how grateful they were, how proud they were of me for being such a supportive brother. I just kept nodding along, letting them think they'd won, that they had somehow pulled one over on me. But inside, I was already laying the groundwork for what would come next. Because if my parents thought they could bulldoze my boundaries, if Emily thought she could waltz into my life and take over my space without a second thought, they were in for a very rude awakening. And as I took another bite of mashed potatoes, barely tasting them, I made a silent promise to myself. This time, I wasn't just going to push back, I was going to make sure they never tried this again. The days following that dinner were a strange mix of calm and anticipation. My parents seemed almost smug, like they had pulled off some grand negotiation, like they had tricked me into being the good son yet again. Emily didn't even bother to reach out, probably figuring she had already won the jackpot. Free rent, no rules, and someone else to handle the grown-up responsibilities she had avoided her whole life. But they had no idea what was coming. I started by quietly tidying up my apartment, not to make space for Emily, but to get it ready for the new tenant. You see, I had already decided weeks ago that it was time to move. My job had recently offered me a promotion in another city, one with a significant pay bump and, more importantly, a fresh start, far from my family's constant demands. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even my closest friends. I wanted a clean break, free of the guilt trips and emotional baggage my family seemed to thrive on. I'd sold the apartment to a nice couple, finalized the paperwork, and signed the lease for my new place. By the time my family showed up at my door with Emily's stuff, I would be long gone. I kept my head down and my mouth shut, letting my parents think they had pulled one over on me when my mom called to confirm that Emily would be moving in on Saturday. I didn't flinch. "That's fine," I said, forcing a casual tone into my voice. "Just let me know what time you'll be there, and I'll make sure I'm around." My mom sounded almost giddy with relief. "Oh, Alex, you have no idea how much this means to us. You're such a good brother." I smiled as I hung up the kind of tight, controlled smile that only comes when you're holding back a burst of laughter. Oh, I had an idea of what it meant to them, but they had no clue what it would mean for them. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. I spent it in my new apartment unpacking boxes, setting up my furniture, and enjoying the fresh, quiet space that now belonged to me alone. I felt a strange, simmering satisfaction as I hung up the last of my clothes and set up my gaming console in the corner of the living room. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I had a pretty good idea who it was. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the phone rang again. This time it was my mom's number. I picked up, struggling to keep my voice even. "Hey, what's up?" "Alex," my mom's voice came through tight and anxious. "What's going on?" "The apartment, it's empty. The landlord says you moved out weeks ago." I leaned back on my new couch, stretching my legs comfortably as I bit back a grin. "Oh yeah, I sold the place." Forgot to mention it. There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end. I could almost picture my parents standing in the empty living room surrounded by Emily's boxes, their carefully crafted plan collapsing around them. "You sold it!" My dad's voice cut in sharp and disbelieving. "Without telling us? Without saying anything to your sister?" "Yep," I replied, popping the P for emphasis. "Didn't really see the point." "I figured you'd find out sooner or later." There was a sputtering sound as my mom tried to form a coherent response. "Alex, this is unbelievable. You promised your sister a place to stay." "You agreed." I chuckled. Letting a little of my true feelings slip into my tone, I agreed to let her move into my apartment. "I never said I'd still be living there." Silence. Thick, awkward silence. "You can't be serious." Emily's voice crackled through the speaker, sounding like she had just been slapped. "Where am I supposed to go now? You said you'd help me out." I felt a pulse of vindication, a deep, satisfying rush of victory. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure something out, Em. You always do." Before she could sputter out another indignant response, I hung up and tossed my phone onto the couch beside me. I leaned back, stretching my arms behind my head, and closed my eyes, letting the peaceful silence of my new place wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt free. That evening, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, the ice clinking softly against the glass as I sank into my new leather couch. The city lights twinkled through my floor-to-ceiling windows, a quiet reminder of just how far I had come. I had shed my old life like a snake sloughing off dead skin, and it felt incredible. But the peace didn't last long. The first sign of the coming storm was my phone lighting up with my mom's name. I let it ring, watching as the screen blinked with her photo. A smiling, slightly blurry picture from a family barbecue years ago. The calls came in rapid succession, her desperation clear in the increasingly frantic voicemails she left. I finally picked up on the fifth call, keeping my tone calm and almost bored. "Hey, Mom, everything all right?" "All right," she sputtered, her voice pitched high with disbelief. Alex, what the hell is going on? You just sold your apartment and didn't tell us. Your sister is out here on the curb with all her stuff, and you didn't even think to mention it. I took a slow sip of my drink, savoring the burn as it slid down my throat. I didn't think it was my responsibility to keep you updated on my personal decisions. I'm not a child, Mom. I don't need your permission to move. She let out a sharp, indignant breath. I could almost picture her clutching the phone tightly, her knuckles turning white as she tried to process my sudden burst of independence. But you promised Emily a place to stay, I chuckled, letting a little of my satisfaction slip into my voice. I promised her my apartment, and technically I delivered. I just didn't mention that I wouldn't be living there anymore. The line went silent for a moment, and I could hear my dad's muffled voice in the background demanding to know what I had said. My mom snapped something back at him, her tone sharp and angry before returning her attention to me. You have no idea what you've done, Alex, she hissed. Your sister has nowhere to go. She's got her whole life in the back of our car, and we're standing here like fools in front of strangers. This is cruel. Is it? I replied, letting the question hang in the air for a moment. Or is it just a consequence of her own choices? You can't keep bailing her out forever, Mom. Maybe it's time she learned a little self-reliance. You're being heartless, she shot back, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and betrayal. Family doesn't do this to each other. I sighed, rubbing my temple with my free hand. Maybe family shouldn't take each other for granted either. The line fell silent again. The only sound, the faint rustle of the city outside my window. I took another sip of my whiskey, letting the warmth spread through my chest as I waited for her response. Alex, she said finally, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. You're being unreasonable. This is your sister. We didn't expect this from you. I closed my eyes, leaning back into the cool leather of the couch. Maybe that's the problem, Mom. You never expect anything from Emily, and you always expect too much from me. Before she could respond, I ended the call, tossing my phone onto the coffee table and leaning back with a satisfied sigh. For the next few days, I braced myself for the fallout. I knew my parents wouldn't just let this go. They had never been the type to admit defeat, especially when it came to their precious golden child. Sure enough, the texts started pouring in long, guilt-laden paragraphs from my mom about family loyalty and disappointing them. Short-clipped messages from my dad demanding explanations and calling me selfish. And of course, the occasional angry, self-pitying tirade from Emily accusing me of betrayal and abandonment. I ignored them all. Instead, I focused on settling into my new place, arranging my furniture just the way I liked it, building the kind of life I had always wanted. One free from the constant demands and emotional manipulation of my family. It was only when a familiar knock sounded at my door that I realized they had crossed the final line. I froze, my heart thudding in my chest as the knocks continued louder this time, each one a sharp, angry demand. I set down my coffee, took a deep breath, and approached the door, peeking through the peephole. My parents stood on the other side, flanking Emily, who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was a mess, her eyes bloodshot, and her clothes wrinkled from what I assumed had been nights spent in the cramped back seat of their car. They hadn't just tracked me down. They had brought the confrontation to my doorstep. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the doorknob before I twisted it and swung the door open, forcing a calm, neutral expression onto my face. Hey, I said, leaning against the doorframe with a casualness I didn't quite feel. What brings you by? My mom's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening as she took a step forward. Don't hey me, Alex. We need to talk. I sighed, crossing my arms over my chest. All right, let's talk. And as I looked into their tired, angry faces, I felt the strange, simmering calm of someone who had finally taken control of their own life. I stepped back, holding the door open just wide enough for my parents and Emily to shuffle inside. I watched as they hesitated, clearly thrown off by my calmness. They had come expecting a fight, and the absence of immediate resistance had clearly put them off balance. Emily was the first to break the silence. She pushed past my mom and dropped a crumpled duffel bag onto my polished hardwood floor. Her eyes bloodshot and lips twisted into a bitter sneer. You really think you can just throw me out like this? She spat, crossing her arms defensively. You're my brother, Alex. You're supposed to have my back. I shut the door slowly, the soft click echoing through the room. I took a deep breath, forcing my racing pulse to steady itself. I had prepared for this moment, rehearsed it in my mind 100 times, but the reality of it was still enough to set my nerves on edge. I'm not throwing you out. Emily, I replied, leaning back against the door, my arms still crossed. I just decided to stop being your safety net. My mom, who had been standing silently beside my dad, finally found her voice. She took a step forward, her face a mask of tight-lipped frustration. "This isn't like you, Alex," she said. Her tone tinged with disappointment. "You've always been the responsible one, the one we could count on. We just don't understand what's gotten into you." I let out a short, humorless laugh, shaking my head as I pushed off the door and stepped closer. "What's gotten into me? You mean besides years of being taken for granted, lied to, and treated like my only purpose in this family is to fix everyone else's messes?" My dad's jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. He looked like he wanted to argue, to push back, but I could see the cracks in his resolve. I had never spoken to them like this before, never laid out my feelings so openly. It was clear that they hadn't been prepared for this version of me, the version that had finally run out of patience. Emily scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. You act like you're some kind of martyr, but you've always had it easy. Mom and Dad have done everything for you. You're just being dramatic." I felt a flash of anger flare in my chest, but I forced it back down, keeping my expression neutral. I had expected this too. The deflection, the gaslighting, the attempt to twist the narrative in her favor. "You really believe that, don't you?" I said, my voice low but steady. "You really think you're the victim here, that you're the one being wronged? You have no idea how exhausting it's been to constantly clean up after you, to be the one holding everything together while you drift through life expecting everyone else to pick up the pieces." Emily's face flushed a deep, angry red, and I saw her fists clench at her sides. She opened her mouth to fire back, but I cut her off, my voice rising just enough to drown out whatever excuse she had been about to make. "I'm done, Emily." I said, my tone hard and final. "I'm done being your fallback plan. I'm done sacrificing my own peace of mind for your endless chaos." My mom stepped forward, her eyes filling with tears, her hands wringing nervously in front of her. "Alex, please, she's your sister. You can't just turn your back on her like this." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm, to stick to the plan I had carefully laid out. "I'm not turning my back on her, Mom. I'm just refusing to let her drag me down anymore." My dad, who had remained silent until now, suddenly snapped, his face contorting with a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "You're being selfish, Alex. You're throwing away your family over a little inconvenience." I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat, but I forced it back down, letting the silence stretch between us until the tension became almost unbearable. "A little inconvenience," I repeated slowly, my voice tinged with incredulity. "Is that what you call years of emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, and being used as a personal ATM? You've spent my entire life conditioning me to believe that my needs come second to everyone else's. And now you're surprised that I've finally had enough." My mom's tears spilled over her shoulders, shaking as she took another step closer, reaching out as if to pull me into a hug. "Alex, please, we're a family. We need to stick together." I took a step back, my jaw clenching as I forced myself to maintain my composure. Family doesn't mean being used. It doesn't mean being taken advantage of, lied to, and guilted into sacrificing your own happiness for someone else's comfort. Emily's face twisted with rage, her voice a sharp, bitter hiss as she stepped forward, jabbing a finger into my chest. "You're a coward. Alex, you think you're better than us, but you're just a selfish, heartless jerk who abandoned his family for a bigger paycheck." I held her gaze, refusing to back down, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Maybe I am, Emily. Maybe I'm a selfish, heartless jerk. But at least I'm finally free." For a long, breathless moment, the room was filled with nothing but the sound of our harsh, angry breathing. The tension so thick it felt like a physical presence pressing down on all of us. Finally, my dad grabbed Emily by the arm, pulling her back a step. his face tight with barely suppressed fury. "Fine," he snarled, his eyes locking onto mine. "If this is how you want to play it, then don't come crying to us when you realize you've burned every bridge you've ever had." I took a slow, deliberate step back, my eyes never leaving his. "I'm not the one who set the bridge on fire, Dad. I'm just the one who finally stopped pretending it wasn't burning." Without another word, I reached for the door and pulled it open, gesturing for them to leave. My mom's sobs grew louder, her shoulders shaking as she stumbled past me, followed closely by my dad, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Emily hesitated for a moment, her eyes locking onto mine with a mixture of hatred and disbelief before she spun on her heel and stormed out after them, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. As the door clicked shut behind them, I felt the last of my anger drain away, replaced by a deep, overwhelming sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. The door had barely clicked shut behind my family before I let out a long, shuddering breath. The room felt quieter, the air clearer, as if their departure had physically lifted a weight from my chest. I sank into my couch, staring at the closed door for a long moment, letting the adrenaline drain from my system. The reality of what I had just done slowly settled over me, a mixture of satisfaction and nervous anticipation. I had drawn a line, enforced a boundary, and refused to be the family's emotional crutch any longer. But I also knew this wouldn't be the end of it. People like my parents and Emily didn't just walk away without a fight. Sure enough, the texts started pouring in the next day. "Mom, I can't believe you would treat us this way. Family is supposed to be there for each other, not abandon each other over a misunderstanding. Dad, you're making a mistake, Alex. You'll regret this when you're all alone. Don't expect us to come running when you need us. Emily, you heartless jerk. I hope you choke on your fancy new life. I won't forget this." I ignored them, each message reinforcing my decision to walk away. I had spent too many years sacrificing my own happiness to keep the peace. Too many nights lying awake wondering if I was the one being unreasonable. But now, with their voices reduced to cold, bitter text bubbles on my screen, it felt different. It felt right. About a week after the confrontation, I got a call from my aunt, the only member of my extended family who hadn't completely bought into my parents' narrative over the years. She was a blunt, no-nonsense woman who had always seen through Emily's manipulations and my parents' excuses. I hesitated for a moment before answering, bracing myself for another guilt trip, but her voice was surprisingly warm. "Hey, Alex," she said, her tone a mixture of concern and pride. "I heard what happened. Your mom's been calling everyone trying to paint you as the villain, but I wanted to hear your side of things." I leaned back into the couch, relief washing over me like a cool breeze. "I appreciate that. Honestly, I just reached my breaking point. I couldn't keep playing the role they wanted me to. The responsible son, the one who always picks up the pieces." She let out a dry, knowing chuckle. "Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I've watched them do this to you for years. You've always been the one they relied on, and they never appreciated it. I'm proud of you for finally standing up for yourself." I felt a tightness in my chest loosen at her words. A small but significant validation I hadn't realized I needed. "Thanks, Aunt Lisa. That means a lot. Don't let them drag you back into their mess," she added, her voice firm but gentle. "They're going to try. Trust me, they're not used to you saying no, and they won't take it well. But you did the right thing." I swallowed the sudden lump in my throat, my eyes stinging slightly. I promise." We chatted for a few more minutes, mostly about small, inconsequential things. Her garden, my new job, the latest family gossip. And by the time we hung up, I felt a little lighter. I expected my parents to eventually back off to accept that I was serious about my boundaries, but they only doubled down. The texts continued, growing more desperate and manipulative as the days went on. "Mom, I miss my son. Please come back to us. We can work this out." "Dad, you're being unreasonable. Family is all we have. Don't throw it away over a little misunderstanding." "Emily, you'll pay for this, Alex. I swear you will." I blocked their numbers. It felt a little dramatic, a little final, but I needed the peace. I needed to let myself breathe without constantly being dragged back into their chaos. I focused on my new job, on building a life that didn't revolve around my family's demands. I reconnected with old friends, started going to the gym again, even picked up a few new hobbies I had always been too busy to try. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself. Then about a month later, I got a letter in the mail. Thick, expensive-looking paper, the kind used for formal invitations or legal documents. My heart skipped a beat as I tore it open, half expecting some sort of lawsuit or demand for financial support. Instead, it was an invitation to a family reunion. The handwriting on the envelope was my mom's. Her looping, slightly messy, cursive, unmistakable. I unfolded the letter, my eyes skimming over the carefully chosen words, each one dripping with forced sincerity and thinly veiled guilt. Dear Alex, we hope this letter finds you well. We miss you and we would love to see you again. We want to put the past behind us and rebuild our family bonds. Life is too short to let misunderstandings tear us apart. Please join us for a family reunion next month. It would mean the world to us to have you there. Love, Mom and Dad. I sat back, letting the letter fall onto my coffee table, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. They really thought they could paper over years of manipulation and emotional neglect with a few carefully chosen words and a forced smile over stale barbecue. I considered the invitation for a moment, picturing the scene. The awkward small talk, the forced apologies, the thinly veiled resentment simmering beneath every strained smile. It would be a disaster. A minefield of unspoken grievances and unresolved tensions. I tossed the letter into the trash, my hands surprisingly steady as I folded the lid shut. I had already made my choice. I was done playing their game. The weeks that followed felt like a slow but steady unraveling of my old life. I found myself thinking less and less about my parents and Emily. Their constant demands and emotional manipulation fading into the background like a bad song I had finally switched off. My new apartment felt more like home. With each passing day, I hung photos of friends, framed a few motivational quotes that didn't feel too cliché, and even bought a sleek modern coffee table that had caught my eye during a lunch break. It felt good, refreshing even, to create a space that was purely mine, untouched by the shadow of my family's chaos. I started making new friends at work, going out for drinks after a long day, joining a few coworkers for weekend hikes. For the first time in years, I felt like my life was expanding, not shrinking to fit the mold my parents had tried to shove me into. One Friday evening, I found myself sitting at a rooftop bar with a few colleagues, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and pink over the city skyline. The air was warm, tinged with the faint scent of grilled food from a nearby vendor, and the distant hum of traffic served as a comforting background noise. So, Alex, my coworker Maya said, leaning in with a mischievous grin, her dark eyes sparkling in the golden light. What's your deal? You never talk about your family. Got some deep, dark secrets you're hiding from us. I paused, my fingers tightening around the cool glass of my beer for a brief moment. My first instinct was to brush it off, to dodge the question like I always had. But something about the warm, easy atmosphere made me hesitate. Nah, I replied, forcing a casual chuckle. Just complicated family stuff, you know how it is. She raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued, but didn't press further. Instead, she clinked her glass against mine and smirked. Well, here's to living our best drama-free lives. I smiled, clinking my glass against hers. I'll drink to that. That weekend, as I was settling into my couch with a bowl of popcorn and a new Netflix series, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, half expecting another blocked number attempt from my parents, but it was a message from my Aunt Lisa. Aunt Lisa. Hey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing well. Proud of you for standing your ground. I felt a small, warm flicker of gratitude as I typed out a quick reply. Me. Hey, Aunt Lisa. I'm doing great, actually. Thanks for checking in. It means a lot. I set my phone down, feeling a strange mixture of relief and regret. It had been weeks since I had spoken to anyone in my family, and while I didn't miss the drama, there was still a small, stubborn part of me that missed the idea of family, the version I had always hoped for but never quite found. But as I took a deep breath, letting the familiar sounds of my favorite show fill the room, I reminded myself that family didn't have to be the people you were born to. It could be the people who chose you, who respected you, who genuinely wanted the best for you. A few days later, I got another letter in the mail. This one from my parents. I recognized my mom's handwriting immediately, the tight, slightly messy loops of each letter. A familiar reminder of countless birthday cards and passive-aggressive notes left on the kitchen counter when I was a teenager. I hesitated. My fingers hovering over the envelope flap. I knew I shouldn't open it, that I should just toss it in the trash like the last one. But curiosity got the better of me. I tore it open the paper, crackling loudly in the quiet of my apartment. Dear Alex, we hope you're doing well. We've been thinking about you a lot and we miss you terribly. We understand that things got heated during our last conversation and we want to make things right. We're willing to put everything behind us if you are. Please, come home. We can start fresh as a family. Love, Mom and Dad. I felt a strange, hollow ache in my chest as I read the words, my eyes scanning over the carefully chosen phrases, each one dripping with forced sincerity and emotional manipulation. They still didn't get it. They still thought this was something that could be fixed with a few words on a piece of paper that they could gloss over years of emotional neglect and guilt trips with a half-hearted apology and a few hollow promises. I folded the letter neatly and set it aside, my hands surprisingly steady. I didn't feel angry, not really, just tired. Tired of the cycles, the empty gestures, the endless loop of guilt and disappointment. That evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their acceptance. I didn't need to fix things to smooth over the rough edges of our fractured relationship. I could move on. I could build a life that didn't revolve around their expectations, their demands, their disappointments. I could choose my own peace, my own happiness without constantly sacrificing it for the sake of a family that had never truly appreciated me. I pulled out my phone, typed a quick message to Aunt Lisa, and hit send. Me, thanks for always being there, even when they weren't. I appreciate you more than you know. Her reply came almost instantly. Aunt Lisa, always kiddo. You've got this proud of you? I leaned back, closing my eyes as the cool evening breeze swept over my face, carrying away the last remnants of my old life. For the first time in years, I felt free. Story 2. Caleb is my name. My age is 31. It would be helpful, but not significant, if I had to summarize my connection with my family in a single statement. Ever since I was a teenager, that has been my unofficial title, the trustworthy one. The person you might rely on to repair a dripping faucet. At 5 in the morning, take someone to the airport. Give money without questioning when it will be returned. At one Thanksgiving, the background figure played my younger sister, Mia. Everyone chuckled. As usual, my mom and I just grinned through it. Even the birthday celebration wasn't for me. The occasion was my brother Ryan's 35th birthday. The golden child is him. Become a lawyer, as my father had always desired. Got married last year to a woman who refers to our family as traditional American with a touch of dysfunction. That strikes her as lovely. Ryan is the kind of person that signs texts with his family group and shares all of his accomplishments on LinkedIn. I so anticipated the typical passive exclusion when Mom said she was hosting a small fancy dinner to mark his birthday. The act they conducted at the restaurant caught me off guard. It was one of those rooftop spots in the heart of the city, with string lights, expensive cocktails, and waitresses who all looked like they were straight off of a Netflix set. As usual, I was the first one there. Since I was aware of how these things work, I had contacted in advance to confirm the reservation and had even paid the deposit. I nodded when the hostess inquired whether I was part of the Wilcox party. She arched an eyebrow. She said, "You're early. Regarding the sitting arrangement, your mother was rather particular." When the others showed up, it ought to have been my first hint. Uncle Jared, his new girlfriend who appeared younger than Mia Ryan, Mom, Dad, and Mia. As if they were entering a red carpet, they all gave and received kisses and hugs. I got up to welcome them. My mom hardly gave me a glance. With that tight smile she saves for store clerks and neighbors, she added, "Oh, Caleb, take a seat over there." A good 10 feet from their immaculate round table, she waved her wine glass toward a swaying chair beside the garbage can. "This is a family table." I blinked. "What?" She responded, "You're fine, honey. In any case, that seat is nearer the bar. I take it you're a whiskey lover." Everyone laughed, even the waiter. I remained still while I waited for someone to speak. Ryan didn't even look at her. He was too preoccupied with cufflink adjustments. Mia simply shrugged. "Stop being dramatic," she advised. "We're not sitting on a throne, exactly." I said, what else could I do, as they celebrated Ryan's accomplishments and laughed about inside jokes I never participated in. I sat in that groaning, unsteady chair. When the waiter arrived, she inquired whether I would want a drink. I placed an order for water. Unless someone laughed so loudly that the sound carried, I couldn't even hear what they were saying. The worst thing, the deposit receipt was still in my jacket pocket. Mom stated she didn't want to charge her card in case things changed, so I would put down $500 for this reservation. The laughter increased in volume as the evening wore on. The presents were displayed. Someone gave Ryan a limited edition pin and another a brand watch. I brought a framed picture of the three of us children at the beach, which is one of the rare occasions when we all appear truly joyful. I had taken the effort to edit it, tidy it up, and choose a beautiful frame. I never had the opportunity to offer it to him. It remained nestled behind my chair. When dessert arrived, they displayed a 3-tiered cake adorned with sparklers and gold leaf. It was transformed into an entire show by the server. Everyone gave a clap. Ryan smiled. The same waitress who had before laughed then came to my table with a stylish leather folder as the sparklers went out. She responded gently, "Here's the bill, sir. When you're prepared, I took it open to $850. I glanced at her, then at the champagne and laughing table, and then at my mom. Unsurprised, she arched an eyebrow. This was almost what she had anticipated. It was almost as if this had been planned. Something changed inside of me at that point. It did not embarrass me. I was not embarrassed. I was satisfied. Calmly and carefully, I got up and moved to their table. Despite the quiet music, my speech was heard well. Instead, you might want to try the family table. I then presented Ryan with the bill. Confused, he blinked. "What is this? What is it?" "It pays to be the only son that counts." I turned to leave after saying that. However, they were unaware that I had done more than simply pay the deposit, so I stayed. I organized the wine pairings, reserved the cake, and even chose the flower arrangement that my mother proudly described as elegant. As usual, I had just enough patience to see things through, and my card was on file for everything, completely quietly and with receipts. I didn't leave all at once. For them, that would have been too simple, too easily forgotten. Rather, I returned to my seat with composure. I watched the situation unfold from the swaying chair next to the garbage can, as if I were seeing a play that had been practiced too much. However, the script was going to alter this time. Pale Ryan opened the bill. To $850. "Do you mean me?" Mom gave it a quick look and rolled her eyes. "That isn't possible." "Oh," I said, "that's correct. So loud, the server can hear it. Appetizers, beverages, personalized cake, gratuity included. Last week, I made all the reservations. $500 was the deposit, Mom. You do remember that." "You said that you did not want it to appear on your card." She had lost her grin. "This isn't the moment, Caleb." I let the chair creak under me as I leaned back. "I think this is the ideal moment. I was supposed to be at the guest table. All right, I wasn't supposed to be in the pictures. Get out of the path. All right, but after shutting me out like I'm a stranger, you don't get to charge me." There was silence at the table. Uncle Jared's girlfriend, who had spent the whole evening sulking into her phone, even looked up. Mia chuckled, a little tense, and compelled Caleb. "You're acting so theatrical. Come on, we assumed you were okay with it. You constantly have to pay for stuff." I wasn't prepared for how hard that statement affected me. Every time I say something, you pay for it. As if it were a quality. As if it were a weakness. As if I hadn't chosen it out of love or duty at the very least. but something they would become accustomed to, like me arriving early or the sun rising. I inhaled deeply. You're correct. Birthday meals, unexpected gatherings, and those never-ending family crises are all expenses. I always cover. Not tonight, though. No more. Ryan cleared his throat. What the heck? You're simply leaving. The reservation was made by you. We have your cards on file. About half an hour ago, I also canceled it, I remarked as I took my phone out of my pocket and gave it a couple taps. The restaurant manager was contacted and asked to reprint the bill with the updated tab. Now it's all your fault. By the way, have fun watching. It must have been expensive. Ryan appeared to be ready to speak when the waiter came back with a fresh copy of the bill and placed it neatly in front of him. We have eliminated the deposit and related fees per the reservation holder's request. Tonight's total, it costs $2,850 from the time of arrival. Do you want to divide it? Ryan remarked right away, pushing the folder in Mom's direction. I'm not paying for this. You came up with this concept. The woman said you ordered 2 bottles of wine. You also claimed that it was your treat. Ryan gave a bark. I saw them fall apart. Fingers pointing, voices rising, and excuses piling up one after the other like a Jenga tower on the verge of collapsing. I got up and walked back to the table, but nobody even noticed. Retrieved the little gift bag with the framed picture by reaching under the chair. I held it in my hands for a time. Now it felt heavier, not from the wood or the glass, but from the weight of what it stood for. Evidence that we were a memorable family for a little moment. I approached and carefully set it in front of Ryan. Cheers to your birthday. After saying that, I turned to go. Caleb behind me. Mom called. She spoke in a strained voice. You're going overboard. Things are usually taken so personally by you, I didn't turn around. I simply continued walking in the direction of the elevator, allowing the final section to linger like a mist. At last, I was getting off the ride. Although it was quiet below, I could feel the night air hitting my face as I stepped out onto the street. For the first time in hours, I grinned. I hadn't swallowed it for once, not because I'd desire anything. I hadn't cooperated. I hadn't purchased the right to be disregarded. After a few blocks of walking, I took out my phone once more. They were unaware that I had paid for more than just the supper, so I had one final task to complete. My card was connected to the ride-sharing account of the group. The hotel is no different. Even though they all used streaming services for convenience, Ryan and his wife were staying for the weekend. I quietly took out my card, accessed each app one at a time, canceled the things I owned, and revoked the funds I had contributed. Not with malice. Uncertain, I didn't assist them. Their pocketbook wasn't me. Their unseen sibling wasn't me quietly seated next to the garbage bin, waiting to be remembered. I was finished. The next morning, I received a ping from my banking app informing me that a $278 hotel bill had been denied. I had disconnected my card. After that, there was an attempt to log in to Netflix, Spotify, and Apple Music. I could almost hear myself. I heard his voice. How did the family plan turn out? The lovely thing about it was that for so long, everything had been in my name. Nobody ever considered checking. They simply utilized it continuously, and in silence, I received the first SMS by midday. Mom sent an SMS. Hey, there's a strange thing happening at the hotel. Your card isn't functioning. They say, have you made any changes? No salutation, no expression of regret, simply bewilderment about the disruption in service. I didn't answer. Another message. This one from Ryan arrived half an hour later. The key to our room stopped functioning. They claim that a declined card was the reason for the reservation's cancellation. Could you please solve this? Make this right. I spent more time staring at those 2 words than I should have. That was the underlying message of every phone conversation, group chat, and invitation to a guilt trip for years. Could you please solve this? The auto battery, the gift that was forgotten, the unexpected bill. One of Mom's passive-aggressive remarks went too far, causing emotional fallout, and someone started crying. I was always the one who fixed things. No more. After shutting off my phone, I went for a stroll. While chaos simmered somewhere in a hotel lobby, there was something freeing about walking down the quiet side streets. I pictured Ryan and a weary receptionist arguing at the front desk. Mom must have been trying to remain calm as she called all of her contacts at the club. Most likely, Mia was unaware of it at the time. Alexa declined to play her favorite playlist that night, and she would find out when she got home. I switched on my phone once more. 41 messages, 17 calls were not returned. Like a Christmas tree, the group chat was illuminated. Mia sent a text. "Why is Hulu requesting that I renew my subscription? Has the password been changed?" Caleb received a text from Mom. "What's going on?" Ryan texted. "This is ridiculous. I just had to put the hotel on my card." Aunt Laura texted, "Hey, sweetie. Your mom said something happened with the accounts. Just let me know if you need help getting it sorted." Even Aunt Laura was reaching out. Now the same woman who once told me I looked like a substitute teacher when I wore a blazer to a wedding. Still, I said nothing. Then just as I was getting ready to make dinner, the final call came in. This time from Dad. Now my dad's not the type to involve himself in family spats. He's a let them sort it out kind of guy. But when money gets involved, that's when he shows up. I picked up Caleb. He said, his voice clipped. "I don't know what's going on, but you need to fix this." There it was, again. Fix this. "What exactly am I fixing?" I asked calmly. "You canceled everything. The hotel, the rides. Your sister says she can't watch anything on her TV. Your mother's losing her mind, trying to get in touch with someone at customer service." I stayed quiet. "You've made your point," he added. "Now be an adult and undo whatever it is you did." I let out a breath. "You want me to be an adult?" "Great. Then treat me like one. Not like a bank. Not like a backup plan. You all made it clear last night where I stand. And guess what? I finally believe you." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear him processing. Searching for the right response. "You're being dramatic." I laughed. "No, Dad. I was being silent for 30 years. This is me finally raising my voice, and I hung up. A minute later, a new text came through for me. "This isn't like you. Are you okay?" It was the first message that sounded even remotely human, and for a second I hesitated. Maybe she really didn't know. Maybe she'd just been going along with what the others did. Thinking I didn't care. Maybe she thought I liked being left out, that I didn't mind being invisible because I never said anything. But then I remembered her voice at the restaurant laughing as she said, "We're not sitting on a throne exactly." She knew they all did. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my email. There were more subscriptions to cancel, more accounts to recover. I hadn't even accessed the shared Amazon Prime or the emergency savings account I donated to for years without ever seeing $1 returned. That was next, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't merely standing away from the table. I was flipping it. The next morning, I woke to quiet. No new texts, no missed calls, just the strange silence that comes after a storm. But I knew better. That wasn't peace. That was regrouping. I could almost image them in a family huddle, mumbling, planning, trying to figure out how to address the matter without really admitting they created it. I prepared coffee, sat by the window, and watched the street come alive. Somewhere out there, my family was worried, and I wasn't at 9:13 a.m. There was a pause. Mom phoned once more. I didn't answer. Then a voicemail rang. I paused, then listened. She always managed to get her voice past me, however, curiosity prevailed. "This is getting out of control. Caleb, you're harming the whole family, and I'm not sure what you're attempting to show." The card was refused, so Ryan had to postpone their spa day. Mia's software subscription was canceled, therefore she missed the deadline. "The blood pressure of your father has increased. You're not this person. Be sensible." I listened to that sentence again. "You're not this person," and gave a sour chuckle. They would say that, of course. Now that I wasn't, they had based their whole sense of comfort on the notion that I was dependable, accommodating, and boundlessly giving. I was misbehaving. But the completed section not once, Not once did she inquire as to why. By midday, I received emails from 2 subscription sites informing me that other users had attempted to log in many times but were unable. I made all of the password changes. Even the digital picture frame that automatically uploaded family photos, which I got Mom for Christmas last year. I used a single image in place of the slideshow, the trash can, and the edge of someone else's celebration frame me as I sit by myself at the rooftop dining table. By 3 p.m., Mia finally broke, so they witnessed it. She sent an SMS. "All right, whoa, you're right. You were heard. Would you kindly quit right now?" She didn't apologize. She didn't inquire about my feelings, ask me to stop. Please to clean up the mess they created when I silently quit repairing it. When I was 11 years old, I responded and sobbed because Ryan had a birthday celebration, but I had not. When I purchased my own prom attire at the age of 17, you informed me that I was being ungrateful. That's what boys do, according to Mom. They look after stuff. I lent you money for your apartment deposit when I was 26. I was being a nice son, you stated. Me, however, you chuckled as I sat by myself next to a garbage can at our brother's birthday supper. So no, I'm not going to stop. Yes, you are. She. No response from Reddit. However, it didn't end there. Ryan's wife sent me an email at about 5 o'clock in the evening. Talk in the subject line, I opened it, anticipating a kind entreaty. An olive branch, perhaps? Rather, I discovered a 3-paragraph attempt at diplomacy disguised as a guilt trip. I understand that family may be chaotic and that bearing the burden isn't always simple. Caleb, I've always considered you to be the family's glue, but glue doesn't produce sound. Silently, it keeps everything together. I know you're furious, but it doesn't benefit anyone to openly voice issues, especially when they interfere with other people's plans. It only makes you resentful. I'm hoping you'll change your mind before things get out of hand. Sienna, before things went too far. I glanced at that final phrase. Allow me to explain glue to you. I have been dry for years and it cracks if you leave it out for too long. I also didn't answer her. Rather, I accessed the Emergency Family Fund, a savings account that I had subtly made contributions to since I was 25, believing it was for everyone. Do you want to know who didn't participate in the event of a critical situation, Ryan? 4 years ago, Mia placed a single deposit, which she never touched again. On 2 occasions, Mom used it to pay for unforeseen medical expenses that were actually elective cosmetic procedures. He handled it like a mortgage backup dad. It included $1,600. I owned half of it. I then transferred my portion. Caleb is my name. It would be helpful, but not crucial, if I had to sum up my relationship with my family. In one word, at the age of 31, ever since I was a teenager, that has been my unofficial title. The trustworthy one. That person who you could rely on to fix a leaking faucet, take someone to the airport at 5 in the morning, and lend money without questioning when it would be returned. At Thanksgiving, the background figure who played my younger sister Mia once made a joke. Everyone chuckled. As usual, my mom and I just grinned through it. Even the birthday celebration wasn't for me. The occasion was my brother Ryan's 35th birthday. The golden child is him. Become a lawyer, as my father had always desired. My spouse, whom I married last year, describes our family as traditional American with a dash of trouble. That strikes her as lovely. Ryan is the kind of person that signs family group texts with his best Ryan and shares all of his accomplishments on LinkedIn. I so anticipated the typical passive exclusion when Mom said she was hosting a small, fancy dinner to mark his birthday. The act they conducted at the restaurant caught me off guard. It was one of those downtown rooftops, expensive beverages, string lights, and waitresses who all appear to have just stepped off the set of a Netflix series. As usual, I was the first one there. I had confirmed the reservation over the phone. I knew how these things worked, so I even paid the deposit. I was asked if I was part of the Wilcox party by the hostess. I gave a nod. She arched an eyebrow. She said, "You're early. Regarding the sitting arrangement, your mother was rather particular." When the others showed up, it ought to have been my first hint. Uncle Jared. His new girlfriend, who appeared younger than Mia Ryan, Mom, Dad, and Mia. They all exchanged embraces and kisses like they were heading on to a red carpet. I got up to welcome them. My mom hardly gave me a glance. With that tight smile she saves for store clerks and neighbors, she added, "Oh, Caleb, take a seat over there." She indicated with her wine glass to a shaky chair beside the garbage can, a good 10 feet away from their spotless circular table. "This is a family table," I blinked. "What?" she responded. "You're fine, honey. In any case, that seat is nearer the bar. I take it you're a whiskey lover." Everyone laughed, even the waiter. I remained still while I waited for someone to speak. Ryan didn't even look at her. He was too preoccupied with cufflink adjustments. Mia simply shrugged. "Stop being dramatic," she advised. "We're not sitting on a throne exactly," I said. What else could I do, as they celebrated Ryan's accomplishments and laughed about inside jokes I never participated in. I sat in that groaning, unsteady chair. The waitress came by and asked if I wanted a drink. I placed an order for water. Unless someone laughed so loudly that the sound carried, I couldn't even hear what they were saying. The worst thing, the deposit receipt was still in my jacket pocket. I placed $500 down for this reservation since Mom stated she didn't want to put it on her card in case things changed. The laughter increased in volume as the evening wore on. The presents were displayed. Someone bought Ryan a designer watch, another a limited edition pin. I brought a framed photo of the three of us kids at the beach. One of the few occasions we'd all looked really delighted, I had taken the effort to edit it, tidy it up, and choose a beautiful frame. I never had the opportunity to offer it to him. It remained nestled behind my chair. When dessert arrived, they displayed a 3-tiered cake adorned with sparklers and gold leaf. It was transformed into an entire show by the server. Everyone gave a clap. Ryan smiled. And then when the sparklers died out, the same server who laughed earlier approached my table carrying a slick leather folder. She responded gently, "Here's the bill, sir." When you're prepared, I took it open to $8.50. I glanced at her, then at the champagne and laughing table, and then at my mom. Unsurprised, she arched an eyebrow. This was almost what she had anticipated. It was almost as if this had been planned. Something changed inside of me at that point. It did not embarrass me. I was not embarrassed. I was satisfied. Calmly and carefully, I got up and moved to their table. Despite the quiet music, my speech was heard well. Instead, you might want to try the family table. I then presented Ryan with the bill. Confused, he blinked. "What is this?" "It's the price of being the only son that counts." I turned to leave after saying that. However, they were unaware that I had done more than simply pay the deposit, so I stayed. I had made reservations for the cake, planned the wine pairings, and even picked out the flower arrangement that my mother had proudly described as elegant. As usual, I had just enough patience to see things through, and my card was on file for everything. Completely quietly and with receipts. I didn't leave all at once, for them forgetting that would have been too simple. Rather, I composedly sat down once again on the swaying chair next to the garbage can and observed the scenario as if it were a play that I had seen too many times. However, the script was going to alter this time. Pale Ryan opened the bill to $850. "Do you mean me?" Mom gave it a quick look and rolled her eyes. "That isn't possible." "Oh," I said, "that's correct. So loud the server can hear it. Appetizers and main courses, beverages, personalized cake, gratuity included. Last week I made all the reservations." $500 was the deposit. "Mom, you do remember that. You said that you did not want it to appear on your card." She had lost her grin. "Right now, this isn't the moment." "Caleb," I let the chair creak under me as I leaned back. "I think this is the ideal moment I was supposed to be at the guest table." "All right, I wasn't supposed to be in the pictures. Get out of the path." "All right, but after shutting me out like I'm a stranger, you don't get to charge me." There was silence at the table. Uncle Jared's girlfriend, who had spent the whole evening sulking into her phone, even looked up. Mia chuckled, a little tense, and compelled Caleb. "You're acting so theatrical." "Come on, we assumed you were okay with it. You constantly have to pay for stuff." I wasn't prepared for how hard that statement affected me. Every time I say something, you pay for it, as if it were a quality, as if it were a weakness, as if I hadn't chosen it out of love or duty at the very least, but something they would become accustomed to, like me arriving early or the sun rising. I inhaled deeply. You're correct. Birthday meals, unexpected gatherings, and those never-ending family crises are all expenses. I always cover. Not tonight, though. No more. Ryan cleared his throat. What the heck? You're simply leaving. The reservation was made by you. We have your cards on file. I took my phone out of my pocket and gave it a couple taps before adding, I also canceled it about 30 minutes ago. The restaurant manager was contacted and asked to reprint the bill with the updated tab. Now it's all your fault. By the way, have fun watching. It must have been expensive. Ryan appeared to be ready to speak when the waiter came back with a fresh copy of the bill and placed it neatly in front of him. We have eliminated the deposit and related fees per the reservation holder's request. Tonight's total. It costs $2,850 from the time of arrival. Do you want to divide it? Ryan remarked right away, pushing the folder in Mom's direction. I'm not paying for this. You came up with this concept. The woman said, You ordered 2 bottles of wine. You also claimed that it was your treat. Ryan gave a bark. I saw them fall apart. Fingers, pointing voices, rising, and excuses piling up one after the other, like a Jenga tower on the verge of collapsing. Nobody even knows story. 3. Daniel is my name. My age is 31. I've also been the quiet one in my family for the most of my life. No concerns. The person who always responds and assists on moving day. As long as they remember to invite me the next time everyone in the group chat expects that I won't mind being excluded. I don't make sense. I don't argue. My voice was never the loudest in my family, as I discovered early on. However, that does not imply that I am not aware of things. I take note of everything. Chris, my younger brother, has always been the best kid. He is younger by 2 years after switching degrees. Barely finished college. He now works at a glitzy real estate company where he mostly use his charisma by posing for shirtless closing day pictures with customers. I chose a more subdued route in finance, long hours. Don't take selfies. When I was 28, I purchased my first home, assisted my parents in paying off their mortgage following my dad's back injury, and even provided a loan to Chris. When he initially got to the city, he wanted to pay the rent. However, nobody recalls that. They do recall that Chris is entertaining and positive and that he makes people laugh. I'm told I take things too seriously in the meanwhile. Our birthdays occurred within a few weeks of each other this year. Chris was the first. I showed up as usual, but I didn't have high expectations. A rooftop bar in the heart of the city was hired out complete with gold and silver balloons that said, Happy 29th. A photographer's provided hors d'oeuvres and even a specially designed cocktail menu with beverages that were named after his most memorable events. Like a hero of the battlefield, they toasted him. My mother made a presentation. My father gave him a Rolex in a velvet box. Every man needs a good watch, he said with a proud smile. Everyone gave a clap. I guess I'm finally the favorite for real now, Chris replied with a smirk. I laughed, really, because I knew the environment would change if I didn't. It always does. Tuesday happened to be my birthday. I expected maybe supper or cake, but I didn't expect a rooftop or a Rolex. That morning, my mother texted me, Cheers to your birthday. Dinner with the family at 6 o'clock. He's questioning your dad. I gave her my gratitude. They were eating when I got there. My sister stated that we assumed you would simply turn there, which is why my name wasn't on the group chat earlier that day. I took a seat, no talking, no music, no decorations. They produced one cupcake that was leftover vanilla. The sort I'm not even fond of, with a shattered candle wedged in the middle. I was given a card by my niece that had crayon drawings of a donkey on it. "Congratulations on another year of wasted potential," it added. Everyone chuckled. I didn't. Uncertain if it was a terrible family joke or a hoax, I simply sat there looking at it. My dad didn't tell me. Seeing the horror on my face, grinned and said, "Relax, it's just a joke, unless you're still sensitive," I heard my sister whispered. Yikes, like I was the problem for not playing along. The moment hung heavy in the air. I took out my phone, snapped a photo of the cupcake, the card, and the table. No one noticed. I stood up, said I had to get back to work, and walked out. No one stopped me. I didn't weep, I didn't shout, but I drove straight home, heart thudding, ears ringing with every line I didn't speak. I glanced at the snapshot again, the cheap paper plate, the dirty tablecloth, the half-drank Coke cans in that card placed dead center, like a middle finger. That night, I opened Instagram and posted the photo with a message that read, "Some birthdays come with champagne and Rolexes. Some arrive with leftovers and reminders you'll never be enough. Cheers to knowing the difference." Within an hour, my phone started vibrating. Old college pals remarked stuff like, "What happened?" and "Are you okay?" My cousin, who lives across the nation and seldom speaks to the rest of the family, DM'd me. "This can't be genuine. Please tell me this isn't your birthday." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. By daybreak, the post had over 300 likes. I didn't even tag anyone, but the message was plain. That's when the call started. First my mom, then Chris, then my sister. I didn't answer, but it was my Aunt Maria who eventually snapped. She left a voicemail that started with, "What did you post?" and culminated into her shouting about how private family things don't belong online, how I was making everyone appear awful, and how people at church are asking questions. I listened to the message twice. Then I grinned because for once, they were the ones uncomfortable. For once, they had to answer for something, and I wasn't even close to done. I didn't react to anyone for 2 days. I stopped the group chat, ignored the missed calls, let the messages build up. They varied from phony concern, "Are you okay?" to covert threats. "Will a cupcake really cause you to sour relations?" Chris sent a text. "It was only a joke, dude. Avoid making it strange." For a long time, I gazed at that one. It felt strange that the same person who had earlier failed to attend my college graduation breakfast was now giving me a lecture. I didn't respond. I changed a couple things instead. I started by locking my PayPal and Venmo accounts. How frequently I got would astound you. "Can you see me, buddy?" request from Chris and the rest of the family. They were utilizing Netflix, Spotify, and the phone plan my sister had been using temporarily since 2019, when I erased all of their joint accounts. I detached my Amazon Prime account from my parents' login, updated all of my passwords, and removed my card from the Uber family profile. It wasn't trivial, it was past due. I cleansed my feet. Second, I made my Instagram account public. I shared a carousel of old pictures of me during Chris's birthday, including one from the summer of me helping Dad out in the garage, and another of me clapping in the background as he unwrapped presents. My sister needed help, so every morning I transported her children to camp. I wrote, "Just a few memories with people who always said they don't know where," as the caption. I had the notion I get different treatment from them. No tags, no names. However, the comments came flooding in. Coworkers, friends, and even a few of my mom's former book club pals. According to some, this explains a lot. Or pleased with you for raising your voice. My sister eventually broke that afternoon, unannounced. She knocked on my door as if it were an emergency. She didn't even say hello when I answered the door. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," he remarked as he entered. I folded my arms and leaned on the counter to listen to her. She continued by saying that her parents had good intentions and that organizing Chris's celebration was just simpler. How my lack of ease always makes things more difficult. Then she made a statement that made me stop. "You constantly assume that others can read your thoughts if a larger party was what you want. You ought to have inquired." She was shocked by the biting, bitter sound of my laughter. "I must request that I not be made fun of on my birthday." She blinked. "It was only a joke." "You mentioned that repeatedly. I don't recall my response being humorous." She grumbled and rolled her eyes. People don't know how to handle you because of this. That was the end of it. I gave up trying. At that point, I didn't request her to go. I simply opened the door and waited for her to go past me in a rage. She didn't bid farewell. My mother texted me that weekend. It began with, "You know your father didn't mean it that way," and finished with this lengthy paragraph, "Stop being so theatrical now." As though that might lessen the impact, she included a smiling face. The problem with being the quiet one, though, is this. When we do talk, people are unsure about how to deal with it. They are accustomed to us denying the pain and reducing ourselves to maintain harmony. They never anticipate us resisting. They never anticipate that we will record everything. So I did something I never would have imagined doing. I began to write a blog, unidentified, initially tales, recollections, events that influenced my perception of my family, and how I was never truly seen by them. It wasn't retaliation. It served as therapy. People then began to read. It went somewhat viral to share a post about being the family's emotional garbage dump. I was asked by a local mental health advocate if I would ever think about making the post into a podcast or series. Although I didn't say no, I also didn't say yes. My dad called a week later. I didn't respond. His voicemail was left. "It wasn't long, Daniel. Enough is enough. This has gotten out of hand. The family is being embarrassed by you." Then a silence. "Your point has been made." We are anticipating an apology. For days, the voicemail kept playing in my mind. The family is being embarrassed by you not causing them harm, not letting them down. It's embarrassing. That word adhered to the shoe sole like gum. I deleted the message after playing it back once I had no intention of answering. Not now. Every bone in my body warned me that I had to be careful about what I did next. Passive silence is over. No more ignoring the situation. This time, just to maintain some peace, I wanted people to know the truth, not merely in ambiguous blog entries or Instagram captions, but explicitly presented with names, dates, and memories that never fully went away. I made an appointment with a local photographer for that Friday. I asked her to recreate the lighting from the rooftop lounge while wearing the same button-down shirt I had worn to Chris's birthday. Then I held that leftover cupcake in one hand and the joke birthday card in the other. The frosting slightly melted, just like it had been. She snapped a dozen shots. On Monday, I posted the most striking one with a new caption. "This was my birthday gift from my family this year. After helping them pay off their mortgage, after bailing out my brother, after covering my niece's tuition deposit, when my sister was between jobs, not asking for applause, just tired of pretending this didn't happen." The photo spread fast. People I hadn't heard from in years messaged me, high school classmates, an old boss, even a distant cousin in New Jersey who had cut contact with our side of the family ages ago. One message read, "This is the most honest thing I've seen in a long time. Thank you." But the comments section, that was something else entirely. Hundreds of strangers chimed in, some sharing similar experiences, others expressing outrage. A few people, probably family friends under burner accounts, accused me of airing dirty laundry and being ungrateful. I didn't respond to them. I didn't have to. The community did it for me, but then came the remarks that tipped everything over. Someone having a certified check mark. An editor from a prominent digital magazine commented, "If you're willing to relate your tale, our readers need to hear it. Check your DMs." I sat with the message for hours. Part of me hesitated. I could already hear the charges. Attention-seeking theatrical, attempting to destroy the family for clout. But another part of me, the one that had sat quietly through years of being disregarded, rejected, and treated like a second-tier sibling, leaned forward and clicked. Reply. That's how the interview transpired. They dubbed it the invisible child. What happens when families neglect to celebrate everyone? My birthday was no longer the only topic of conversation. Patterns, generational partiality, and the experience of being the one who consistently gives yet is never seen were all topics of discussion. Although I didn't mention names, I also didn't sugarcoat anything. I told anecdotes about how my mother framed my brother's graduation pictures but neglected to order mine. Chris received a new laptop for Christmas, and I received socks. The year I planned the whole family trip, you were too busy getting towels to include me in the group shot. On a Tuesday, the article was published. Its share count had surpassed 200,000 by Wednesday morning. My email was overflowing. The actual fallout began at that point. Chris was the first to call. He didn't shout. He didn't use profanity. I had never heard the term flat used to describe his voice. "Do you truly despise us that much?" I took a while to reply. I could sense his rage building as he awaited an opportunity to attack. I said, "I don't hate you, but I'm done acting like everything is fine just because it makes things easier for you." He sneered. "Are you aware of how this appears? Regarding that piece, I received messages from clients, customers. We all looked like monsters because of you, Daniel." "No, you did that yourself," I said. "I just raised the mirror." He ended the call. The following day, my mother arrived at my place. I refused to allow her in. Through the door, we exchanged words. She made an effort to act like the victim. "Are you aware of the damage you have caused to this family?" Her voice broke as she said, "People are conversing. Your father has extremely high blood pressure. Your sister has trouble sleeping. What about your brother?" "He feels ashamed." I said nothing. Then she said it. "It was always you who was unappreciative." "No, we apologize." "No, we ought to have performed better." "Thank you, similar to all I've ever given them, time and money." Love was only a deposit for quiet. When I did respond, I was calmer but tougher than she had ever heard me. "You sent me a card that claimed my life was a waste and a cupcake, and now that I've finally consented, you're upset." A lengthy pause ensued, footsteps followed by quiet. My phone buzzed once more that evening. One of my relatives texted me a screenshot. It came from the chat room for the family group. Chris threatened to sue me if I ever mentioned him in public again. My dad said I brought dishonor to the family, and my aunt called me manipulative, so I was kicked out of the thread. However, my sister's message was what really stopped me, cold. It has always been his desire to be the victim. Give it to him. Remember who assisted with changing his diapers? Though I looked at it for a while, I realized they weren't seeing me, not because it hurt anymore. They didn't. The world was now observing. I didn't reply to any of them for a week. I needed time to ponder and experience things completely, rather than repressing it like I normally had. Being noticed felt weird, genuinely seen by strangers who had read my story and been in touch, not by my family. Educators, counselors, and reserved siblings from noisy households. A lady wrote, "I had no idea that anyone else had a birthday similar to mine. Reading yours made me cry." Another person added, "I called my younger brother to apologize after reading your post." It was always he who fell behind. Nevertheless, I knew what was coming. So even with all the encouraging comments, I felt a low hum of dread in my chest. The last pushback. One night, my dad called. I responded in part because I was curious, but it was late later than he typically remained up. No greeting was exchanged, only a sigh. Then, "So are you now this person? For what purpose did I drag us through the mud and throw dirt on the family name by not responding to you?" Some attention from strangers on the internet. I remained silent and let him to rant. "At work, your mother is unable to reveal her face. Your brother is considering relocating to avoid the rumors. What do you think you're proud of?" No, I finally admitted that I wasn't proud, simply put. I no longer feel ashamed. He fell silent. Silence is that told me everything. He wasn't trying to figure it out. He was reprimanding, and I was no longer his dutiful son. He remarked icily, "You've made your bed. Nobody will assist you in lying in it." He hung up after that. My landlord sent me an email the next day. I had been the target of 2 noise complaints from an unnamed person. I had been living alone in a peaceful apartment for weeks. In response to my inquiry, The landlord stated that the complaint detailed angry outbursts and hostile-sounding Zoom calls. It was absurd and obviously made up, but it was obvious that someone was attempting to cause trouble. The worst of it then arrived. I had been working with one of my clients for more than 2 years when they sent me an email informing me that they were ending our agreement. Not a warning, just a vague. We chose to proceed in a new route. I wasn't gullible. I was aware of my family's power. My dad was still acquainted with financial folks. My brother was friends with people in the real estate industry. Whispers are quick to spread. It was not long before I made the connection. They were more than simply injured. They were striking back. Here's something they didn't anticipate, though. I was prepared. I had learned how to prepare from all those years of being disregarded, undervalued, and written off. I wasn't careless. I had money saved up. Now I had a network. My fan base was expanding. I had nothing left to lose, and that was most crucial. After the article informed the magazine editor that I was prepared to go further, I gave her a call. This time we planned a complete interview video. I didn't hold back for every dime they provided or got. I discussed the manipulation, the partiality, and the emotional debt they carried over my head. With the clarity that comes only from years of silent observation, I spoke gently. I then launched my own website, no longer a blog, a whole platform, The Silent Ones. I dubbed it a place for those who had grown up in households where birthdays were accompanied by reminders that they weren't good enough, and where love had restrictions. I started from scratch while building it. Stories, forums, and even a portal for anonymous submissions. The website had more than 20,000 subscribers in only 3 months. I began receiving webinar, podcast, and speaking requests. A few of book agents contacted us. I took care to avoid becoming a caricature of trauma. I had no desire to make a show out of my suffering. However, I knew this area was important. I was aware that there were more of us than most people wanted to acknowledge. Then the phone rang. Grandma was unexpected. The lone member of the family was she. I had maintained communication with my father's mother. Like me, she was quiet, perceptive, and frequently disregarded. She made no inquiries regarding the website or the article. "Daniel," she said, "I've had something I wanted to share with you. When your father was your age," I listened. "He used to call me a burden," she added, claimed that I had never made a contribution, said that I was only a mouth to feed. I remained silent. I assumed he would respect me if I remained silent for a while. She hesitated. He didn't. I was at a loss for words, so I remained silent. "But you didn't stay quiet," she said, "and for that, I'm proud of you." I had never heard those remarks from anyone in my family before. It was a peaceful, final break with the others. A group email with family updates was forwarded to me. It contained pictures from the trip, a remark on Chris's new home, and a brief reference to my parents' will revision. The communication had no mention of my name. There isn't even a line wishing you well. I had been obliterated. I should have been angry or wounded, but instead I felt liberated when my birthday rolled around again. I didn't hold off on making plans till someone else did. I took today off, rented a peaceful mountain cottage. I brought a bottle of wine, a couple novels, and my laptop. I watched the sun set behind the trees while I sat on the porch. My phone was ringing with birthday greetings from actual friends, quiet ones, members, and even former clients who had turned into allies. My life was not marked with a card, not a cheap cupcake. Nobody is asking me to calm down, just tranquility. And that's the problem with letting go of individuals who don't value you. At last, you have room to develop into the person they never thought you could be. I made my own table that year and stopped requesting a seat at theirs.